You're trekking through the Argonne Forest in a deep wooded place, surrounded by the sound of rapid fire. And very quickly, a man who you've known in the 77th Battalion that you are currently in comes running and tells you and Major Whittlesey that there is nobody on your flanks. Where the French were supposed to be are Germans, and there is no allies, and you are completely alone. As a previous history student, I have extensively covered this topic and written multiple papers, and at some point, it is something that determined whether I wanted to go into the military or not. War is something that we can look around and see all around us, especially at this time. And in the past, like during this war specifically, World War I, we were indirectly seeing the repercussions of what war was and is. And now, because of technology and just our modern day and age, that is no longer the case. We can directly see how it affects other people and directly feel the impact of what is currently going on and the decisions that are being made by people that aren't us, things that are completely out of our control, which is the same for some of our men in the military. When they get direct orders, that is what happens. And in this video, I will discuss who Major Whittlesey was. Then I will discuss the specific orders that Major Whittlesey was given and the 77th Battalion. Lastly, I will discuss ways of communication and how the lost battalion was found. Knowing Major Whittlesey is also knowing the circumstances of war and how it affects good people. Major Whittlesey was born in Florence, Wisconsin, and was a lawyer before enrolling himself in officer school. He considered himself a pacifist and a socialist, and he couldn't bear what was happening during World War I, to the point where he made sure that he put himself in the line of fire. Major Whittlesey was never married. He never had kids, and actually some sources say that he might have actually been gay. He was a very strong and very smart, intelligent man. Of course, he was a lawyer, so of course he knew how to play his cards, and he rose through the ranks very quickly within the military. He went into officer school. I believe you start in the Army as a second lieutenant, and he worked his way up to major by the time he took over the 77th Battalion. And Major Whittlesey is who received the direct orders of the 77th Battalion. And according to the official documents provided, the 77th Division were never really given a break between going from battle and coming back. So normally during World War I, there was this little break that most soldiers would take after being in the trenches. They would go into town, if there was a town nearby, and they would have their uniforms completely cleaned, because there was a lot of lice in the trenches, and they would be rid of lice, and then they would go back and start the process basically all over again if they survived. And his team basically came back, and they were supposed to have a small break, and they did not get that. They were told, no, you're going out immediately. Major Whittlesey did fight back about this, which is not very common. He very respectfully told the colonel, I do not feel my men are ready for this, nor are they prepared. And the colonel said that the French would be covering them, they would be okay, and whatever happened in this battle, they were going to be covered. They had allies, they would be fine in the end. And according to this is kind of a way that shows the standpoint on how our communication was in the military and just everyday life for these people. These men were going in and being told to do something, and they didn't really have an answer on whether they could or not do it. They just had to do it. It was not a no sir. It was always a yes sir. So Major Whittlesey takes his battalion into the line of fire once again, and they somehow push back and get into the Argonne Forest. No man had made it past the German defenses this far. They had to go straight through so many different lines of Germans to be able to even get to where they were. No man had ever made it to that point because it was completely, it was impossible. There's no logical explanation on why they were able to push through so easily. They just found a hole and they went with it. Now, Major Whittlesey went in with over 500 men and came out with less than 300. As a matter of fact, the number was in the low 200s. And this type of communication continued throughout, including when they were in the war itself. Now, the 77th Battalion is sitting in the middle of the Argonne Forest. At this point, they're lost. And I say that because the Americans and the Allies have no idea where they are. They have no idea if the 77th Battalion just ceased to exist because of war. And obviously, they weren't keeping a good tally on who was there and who wasn't. It's World War I. We're in early 1900s. And basically, they're sitting there and they are starving. And they have one carrier pigeon left. They had their cellular, so they used to have this very specific pack that did have a telephone connection, kind of like, they did have comms, but the problem is during getting into the Argonne Forest, the comms box was damaged, so there was no communication besides carrier pigeon at this point. And because of that, Major Whittlesey had to save this one carrier pigeon that they had left because they had no other means of communication. Well, at some point, the Americans and the Allies start bombing the 77th Division. And they don't realize that the 77th Division is currently being bombed until Major Whittlesey calls for his comms to take that pigeon, and he writes a letter on a piece of paper and sends it to the Americans with the pigeon. This pigeon's name, very, very strong pigeon, I love this pigeon, was named Jeremy. Jeremy was able to get past all of the bombs that were currently being dropped. He actually got shot by one of the Germans and lost a leg, and Jeremy still made it back to the Allies. And the Allies immediately stopped bombing them. And they realized very quickly that the lost battalion was not lost. They found where they are. They're in the middle of the Argonne Forest. Now the question is how they're going to get there. So they are eventually able to get there. But when they get there, the men had obviously over 300 men that were gone and lost. They were starving. They were cold. They were uncomfortable. They were on their last life. They were not doing good. And the colonel who called these orders directly said that these were acceptable losses and gave everybody there a promotion. Major Whittlesey did not take very good to this. He was not very happy with it. The war ended very shortly after this battle, but it affected a lot of things. Now, I call you to really think about that. This colonel, who had power over so many lives, said that it was acceptable losses because they were able to push back. Now, it's over 300 men's lives that could have been saved and spared. It's something to think of. And at the time, colonels didn't have any punishment. Now they do. But is that the case in all of our politicians or military? Do we continue to see injustice? History repeats itself if it's not remembered. And it seems like that's what's happening. Major Whittlesey and the 77th Battalion Division were able to change the course of a war with only 500 men and ending with 200. Something are odd, right? Give or take a few. Can't get an exact number because these people were just numbers. I ask you to remember what these wars did to people and what we can really do to make sure that nobody is considered an acceptable loss, especially with these circumstances. Thank you.